John Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Fox 10 Newsmaker Saturday. It's a new bat time, same bat channel. And to kick this off, I wanted to kick it off with someone who you all know, who's one of the most interesting politicians, frankly, we've had come down the pike in Arizona history. Take a look at this picture as the 22nd governor of Arizona, Jan Brewer, departed on her final day in office. The Honorable Jan Brewer is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday. Great to see you.
Nice to be here with you, John.
Thanks for kicking it off with us, too. We appreciate it.
Oh, my honor.
When you see that picture, what do you think?
Just now, as I looked at it, I thought about all the memories of being up there on the 9th floor, solving problems and making new friends, and you get just a real camaraderie with the people that you're working with. And it was somewhat of a sad day, but then again, it was like, okay, I'm out of here. It was, you know.
I'm out of here.
You walk out and you turn the lights off, and that's it.
Did you ever consider a run for Senate in Arizona?
You know, I was encouraged to run for the Senate seat here in Arizona, but I don't want to go back to D.C. I don't want to travel back and forth and live half of my life back there and back here. And John, I put in 34 years of service to the state of Arizona, you know, and I started off with the idea that I was going to serve 2 terms in the House of Representatives.
Well, you started off on the school board. That's what got you involved in politics.
That's what I was going to run for, was the school board. But then my husband said, if you really want to make a difference, run for the legislature. And I said, will you support me financially so I don't have to ask for money? He said, yes.
Did your career outstrip your expectations or any dream you ever had about what you could achieve?
It is an amazing opportunity to be a public servant and to get elected by the people that you represent. And as I grew in that job, it was like sometimes you were overwhelmed, especially when I was governor, because I knew that the state of Arizona was on my shoulders, and I had to solve it. It kept me awake at night, to tell you the truth.
Let me roll tape number 2. Governor Doug Ducey. It's been an interesting relationship. I would have thought he would have kind of wrapped you around him. He's been a little bit hands-off when it comes to you, frankly. Do you know why?
I don't have any reason. Maybe he's too busy to reach out to me or his staff, but there hasn't been a lot of interaction between him and I, you know, and I thought that maybe having a Republican governor and another one following, that you would work closer together, but I guess they decided they were going to do it in a different manner.
Do you think he's a lock for re-election?
You know, it's going to be an interesting situation. I know that things are changing a little quick out here in Arizona and across the country too, so he's going to have to work really hard and get his message out there, but we know that there are lots of people out there campaigning on the Democratic side, and they have all their issues. So.
Who was the most formidable candidate for him in the governor's race on the Democratic side?
Oh, you know, I don't know any of them very much at all.
Garcia.
Very well, but I would think that Garcia, that's the one that jumps out of my mind, that he would be the one. However, he kind of blew it the other day.
I guess I would expect you to say that. You think Ducey beats Ken Bennett in a primary with no problem?
No, I think there might be competition there. If nothing else, he's given him a race for
Steve
his money.
Farley on the Democratic side?
But you know what, that happens with Ken running. It tones up Governor Ducey to be a better candidate.
Sharpens him. Steve Farley, state senator.
You know, those people, I don't know. I don't know who.
Those people.
Yeah, those
Are you
people.
talking about Democrats?
I know Farley. You know, he served in the legislature, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I know all of them a little bit, but it's whoever can tell their story and connect. It's so important that you would be able to connect and get your story out there, and we haven't seen a lot of that.
Do you think, we've been hearing this, now, this is my 25th year in Phoenix, 35 or something in Arizona.
Wow.
I've been hearing for all of that time, Arizona is turning purple. It's going to turn blue. We've been hearing this over and over and over. John McCain sounded warning bells about this, saying if the Republican Party doesn't change its approach, they're going to get rolled eventually. Do you think that's happening?
I think that our population is changing immensely, and that in itself will create a tendency to start changing our colors. There's no doubt about it, and the polling shows that, and the independents are going in a different direction. But I believe that today that we're still red, and I think that certainly the Republicans have the advantage if they listen to the people. We got to deliver our message.
And it's candidate by candidate. You say that about, you know, turning a changing demographic. Let's roll tape number 7. This was April 23rd, 2010. You signed SB 1070 into law. There was actually a headline in the New York Times in 2016. It said, before Donald Trump, there was Jan Brewer. They were saying that this moment and your hard stance on illegal immigration, ushered in a climate for a Donald Trump. Do you believe that?
I don't know. You know, I've never given that a whole lot of thought, but I know that the people of Arizona and those in California and Texas are concerned about our borders, and we had to do something. And we crafted 1070 very carefully. You know, it came out through the legislature, and my staff worked on that day and night because we knew that it had initially had problems. And so we crafted it so that it could be upheld, and, you know, the heart of the bill was upheld. A
lot of it was gutted, though.
You know, well, but the meat of it stayed in place.
You're talking about the ability for law enforcement to
ID.
Ask.
Yes, for, you know.
What is your situation?
Yeah,
What's
right.
your status?
You
And
know,
that happens in the jail downtown anyway.
Under reasonable suspicion. I mean, you can't just walk up to, like what President Obama said, walking down the street, eating an ice cream cone, they're going to stop and ask you for your ID. That was never the intent.
Do you feel you were demonized over that?
I think that with certain groups, I was demonized, but I knew that I was facing a problem. When you sit up on the 9th floor, you get a lot of information that sometimes is not always public. But we knew what was going on north of the border. We knew what was going on south of the border. And we had a real problem. We had people coming across our border day and night in droves. And they weren't all nice people.
Do you think it's better now?
I think that it is better. I think that President
There were the
Trump,
protests in the wake of 1070.
Yes.
When you watch that out of the 9th floor, I was downtown. I was there at the state capitol that day in a crane lift covering this. It was a sea of people.
It was.
And I thought, this is really an interesting moment. What did you think?
Well, I couldn't hardly believe my eyes or hear my ears.
Did you think you'd stepped in it, or did you say, you know what?
No, I never looked back. Once I signed that bill and I followed it through, I knew that I had to do something. I had to protect Arizona. I think overwhelmingly, and I think even the Democrats agree, we need to secure our border. And we have immigration problems up the yin-yang here in the United States. And if you don't start with securing the border, you're going to continue to have all the issues that we're faced with.
Okay, so when Democrats say ICE is an assault on humanity and it needs to be abolished.
That's outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. They're law enforcement. They're doing the job. They're putting their life on the line, and they do a lot more than just immigration law at the border. They're throughout our communities. They're doing us a service. They're keeping us safe.
One of the guys who's been very tough on illegal immigration and was through his whole career, and many called him a racist over it, Joe Arpaio. I want to play this crazy exchange that he got into with the comedian Sacha Baron Cohen on his program, supposed program. I've got a couple of things to ask you about it. Let's run. This is tape number 3. Arpaio talking to a toy donut that Sacha Baron Cohen put out there. Take a listen.
To get their guns. It's going to kill you. I'm hoping that somebody else in there has a gun and will shoot that person before he shoots you.
Oh, okay then. Thank you for telling me that.
It was a discussion on gun control, and Arpaio got sucked into it. I talked to him earlier this week, and he said, you know, he thought this thing would only be broadcast in Norway, so he didn't worry about it too much.
The guy says he's from Finland. The guy says he's from Finland, yeah.
Right. So when you saw that, a couple of things. Politicians can be completely duped by
absolutely, absolutely, and he was duped. And this guy is a joke. Now I know people think that he is funny, but I never heard of him.
He is funny.
You know, couldn't even say his name, but he was duped. And what they do is they go and they interview you and they keep you there for an hour. You don't want to walk off because then you get dissed, you know, because you're not interacting in the interview and stuff. So no, I give Sheriff Joe a big break on that. I really do.
Are you close to Sheriff Joe?
Well, I've known him for a long time, you
Right.
know. I was his boss when I was at the Board of Supervisors. Now, he won't admit that, but I told him.
No, that's right. You were the chairman of the Board of Supervisors.
I told him, I said, I signed your check, Joe. I'm your boss. He's, you know.
And you guys had to pay out a lot of money on claims against him
did.
with stuff that happened in the jail. So you're feeling about him ambivalent, or are you a supporter still?
Well, I think that, you know, he can do what he wishes to do. He's got every right to continue down politics. You know, he's not my person for the United States Senate.
You support McSally?
I'm supporting Martha McSally. Yeah, I think she'd be awesome to be able to be our senator.
You work with Kelly Ward to some degree.
I'm sorry.
Well, you worked with, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. Do you think she's been demonized as well? I mean, people have really thrown some stuff at her. Do you think
you know,
it's been
I
unfair?
don't read everything about the, you know, people demonizing her. I read some stuff. You know,
Chemtrail Kelly and all that stuff.
Well, that's the truth. I mean, that Chemtrail Kelly stuff, I mean, she was out there believing we were all getting poisoned by the jet stream.
Well,
you
the
know?
way she tells it is that she held a town hall because her constituents wanted it.
Kelly Townsend, I mean, Kelly Ward, we're getting my names up here, excuse me, the other Kelly, but, you know, she sort of changes the story as she moves on. Sometimes I don't think she's a straight shooter. I think she's very ambitious, and she would not be my favorite.
Can McSally beat Kirsten Sinema?
Well, that's the key. We have to beat Kirsten Sinema, and she's going to be a very viable candidate.
You worked with her. I mean,
I did. I worked with Kirsten
is...
too. I knew her when she was the Greenpeace candidate, and she had red hair, and she has reinvented herself. She is a socialist, absolutely a liberal socialist, and now she's trying to tell people that she is nothing but a moderate and that she can work.
Well, that's her voting
aisles.
record. That's her voting record in the Congress.
Because she plotted and planned and let somebody else take the heat for it. The Democrats want this seat. What else
Would you
is she
agree
gonna
with
do?
me that she is one of the most formidable politicians to come down the pike in Arizona in a long, long time?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And the commercials on TV are wonderful. But I know the real Kirsten Sinema, and other people do too.
You don't think people can change?
Not to that extent. No, I don't. No.
So you were saying if she were elected to the U.S. Senate, we would get somebody very far to the left eventually?
I do.
You
Very
believe
progressive. Yeah.
She would tell you, and we'd love to have her on the program. We've reached out repeatedly. But, you know, this is something
She's very clever and well-spoken, and she can weave things in and out.
Well, and she says, I'm just going to reflect the views of my constituents. That's how I'm going to vote. Okay. I take that you're not buying it. All right, one more before we take a break. There's an interesting race right now for Secretary of State. That's your old job. That's how you became governor when Janet Napolitano departed for the Obama administration. I had Michelle Reagan on last week. Basically, her theme was this. You know, she's facing Steve Gaynor in a primary. She's losing right now. She knows that. She's behind in the polls. She said, look, you know, I had problems early on, but I've corrected them, and the last 4 elections have been clean. Everything's worked well. Here's what she said about it, and on Newsmaker Sunday. I want to just get your take on this.
We've had 4 elections since then that we haven't had that issue, so we know the problem's fixed.
Okay, she had the long lines for the presidential preference in 2016. People were waiting 5 hours in line. She knew that, you know, she didn't oversee that to the point where she probably should have. They cut the number of polling places thinking they didn't need them.
Right.
As a former Secretary of State, how did you read that whole thing when it all happened?
Well, you know, you base all of this and you work with the county recorders in an effort to determine just exactly what it is that they need on election day. And I assume at that point in time, they probably decided they didn't need as many as one would have thought they would have needed the next day after the election.
Now, she said I should have started asking some questions about that, and questioning Helen Purcell, the Maricopa County recorder, and others. Is that what would have been the normal?
I think so. I think that there should have been interaction between the county recorder's office and the Secretary of State. You have oversight. You have responsibilities. I mean, there's you know, you got a rule book. I mean, you know, you got to do this for elections. You got to do that for elections.
Is it disqualifying for her, do you believe? That an election that turns out that way, it's a disqualification?
That's, you know, that's something the voters are going to have to decide. And she has a tough race. She has a very, very tough race, and people are disenchanted with some of the errors that have been made. And she's going to either have to get that message out that she's sorry and that she's fixed them. But Mr. Gaynor has done a pretty good job of putting the explanation out there from his point of view, and he's a smart, well-educated.
You met him?
I have.
What do you think? Because I'd love to have him on the program again. And can you explain why these candidates, both parties, I mean, we can't get Kirsten Sinema on the program anymore. She used to come on all the time. It seems that if you're leading or if you're in a tough race, nobody wants to make a mistake. They don't want to get exposed on a program where something will end up in a political ad. Is that the long and short of it?
Oh, absolutely. They don't.
But that's really not fair to the voters.
No, it's not. I know a lot of the candidates are going around to groups and trying to reach a lot of people that way. But of course, we know there's a lot of people that don't show up at meetings and town halls and district meetings.
I mean, tell me what's
happening
happening here, because I mean, I'm not naive.
They're just absolutely fearful that they are going to make a mistake and that their poll numbers will drop.
Is it that they don't want to do it, or are their handlers telling them don't do it?
Probably both. Probably both. I mean, whether they're handlers, I mean, the politician is a handler too. I mean, they've got gut feelings about what they feel is the right thing to do, and they don't want to blow it, and they're looking at polls. And so why go out there and give themselves exposure to a disaster that could be in the making?
You stepped in it a couple of times.
I did.
You had the brain freeze in the debate with Terry Goddard.
I did, big time.
And you laugh about it.
I do.
Okay,
and everybody was in uproar. Everybody was in uproar.
Except
and
you.
I wasn't in uproar.
Why?
Because I know what had happened. I was listening to Terry Goddard, all the things that he was saying that were not true, and I tried to get them all in my mind organized so that I could go back to him. And then it's like I just couldn't get it formulated in my head. And I sat there and I smiled and I smiled. They said that was the end of my career. That was it, finished.
And so what would you tell these politicians who are playing it safe?
Well, I'm like the general public. I'd like to see these people. I've gone out to some district meetings on my own just to hear some of the candidates, because I have to make up my mind just like everybody else.
Well, it's nice to go to a district meeting. We'd like them to come on the program.
Well,
You're all
I agree,
invited. Anytime, any
Right.
party, we'd love to have you. We're going to take a break. The Honorable Governor Jan Brewer, our guest on the inaugural Newsmaker Saturday. Back in a moment.
American woman, stay away from me. American woman, mama, let me be. Don't come hanging round my door. I don't wanna see your face no more. I got more important things to do. Spend my time.
American woman, Governor Jan Brewer, the Honorable Governor of the state of Arizona, the 22nd governor. That was a pretty sassy hairdo you had back then.
Yeah, I still wear it that way.
do?
Yeah, tomorrow my hair will look like that.
Oh, you didn't bring your A game for Newsmaker Saturday?
I got to stretch it out, you know.
Okay, you pride yourself as a truth teller.
Yes, I do.
I want you to tell me the truth about Jeff Flake, okay? I had him on the program. He's written the book, The Conscience of a Conservative.
Yeah.
It's kind of a spin-off of Barry Goldwater's 1964 book that some say really launched the modern Republican Party. Jeff Flake told me this about what's happening out there with Donald Trump. Take a look. Will you be an outspoken guy challenging the president in his tone and policy? Where do you see your role?
Well, I like to think I haven't been anything else. I have spoken up over the past several months to the consternation of the president sometimes when we disagree. But yeah, I'll speak up, but I'm not going to do things out of spite. I'm going to continue to stand up for what I believe in.
Governor Brewer, what's your take on Jeff Flake? Jeff Flake ran the Goldwater Institute. Most of what President Trump's doing, forget the tone for a minute, if people can. He's doing stuff that any other Republican president, I think, would want to do, may not have the temerity to do it. He does it. But Flake and others are very critical of this guy. What is it that's really touched a nerve in some Republicans that just can't stand this guy?
It's kind of hard to understand or to express what's going on with these people that just want to just bash the president. He ran an election, he ran on certain issues, and he's delivered on his message, and the American public elected him president of the United States. It would seem to me that these people ought to be there trying to work with him. With Jeff Flake, he's a great guy, super intelligent, well-spoken, and but he's a libertarian. And I think most people aren't libertarians. Most people are either conservative Republicans or Democrats. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, you've got your moderates, your independents.
Have you noted a change in Jeff Flake?
Yes,
you think he's a different guy than the guy who went to Washington?
I think that he is a different guy, and I think that he's just got a lot of favor for the President of the United States.
Is it just personally he just doesn't like the tone of how Trump conducts himself? Is that what it is?
That's probably part of it. And
as a Mormon guy, maybe it's just the whole approach.
And, the President has called him out publicly, which is unusual for presidents to do, but we come to know that that's what the President does.
Yeah, and the President has called out a good friend of yours, I know, John McCain.
Oh, yes.
Let's roll video of John McCain. This was the vote on health care. You railed against Obamacare.
Thank you.
You thought it was a total disaster. McCain said it was a total disaster.
Right.
Then when the moment came to kill it, he voted thumbs down not to kill it. How did you read that?
I think that John, given the circumstances, looked at it and realized that a lot of people were going to be really harmed with that, especially your Medicaid people, and they didn't have a solution. They kept working on a bill, but there was no bill. And so therefore, what was he voting for? Was he just going to they kept saying, repeal and replace, repeal and replace.
But only the repeal was in.
But it was the only thing there. And of course, we bled here in Arizona to restore Medicaid to the people here in Arizona.
You took some heat over that.
Yes, until you're sitting in the shoes that gets to make those decisions, that you're taking people off life-sustaining equipment and that they're going to die there, but for the God of the government willing to step in, is a huge, huge burden.
We've got to take a break here on Newsmaker Sunday. When we come back, I'm going to ask you, should John McCain resign? And the Red for Ed movement, what you thought of it. Back in a moment with Jan Brewer, former governor of Arizona, on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, and we decided to kick it off with the 22nd governor of Arizona, Governor Jan Brewer, in part because you're a delight to have on the program. You always tell it like it is, and the other part of it is sometimes it's hard to get these candidates right now on the program. Everybody's running scared. It's horrible.
So I'm a fill-in.
Never. Okay, back to John McCain for a moment. Do you believe he owes it to Arizona voters to step down? He's missed now over 100 votes. He's been out of the U.S. Senate since December. Is there a point where Arizonans deserve full-time representation in the U.S. Senate? We've got Supreme Court nominees. We've got stuff hanging in the balance.
I've known John McCain for a long time. We started our careers out together, him running for Congress and me running for the House of Representatives. And he was duly elected to that office, to that seat. And I think that it's up to him to determine just when he's going to do.
So you cut him a pretty big swath to make that decision.
I think that it's his resignation. He's the one that got elected, and he's the one that's going to decide what he's going to do.
Finally, Prop 100. During the downturn, you felt so strongly about education that you pushed to raise taxes, a 1-cent temporary sales tax, to try to fund education during the downturn. The Red for Ed movement, what do you think of it? What do you make of it? Is it just organic? Is it a political movement, really? What is it? What do you make of it?
Let me say this. The people overwhelmingly passed that Proposition 100
That's right,
because they wanted
teachers.
education. This Red for Ed movement was the frustration of the teachers in the community that got really organized because they felt they weren't getting paid, and they kept getting promises, and there were never any increases. Arizona was on the low end of it.
Right, but the governor gave them that.
The governor stepped up and showed them a 20% raise. We'll have to
Should
see
they
how
be
that plays
grateful
out.
and pipe down?
They should be grateful, and I think the proposition on the ballot is no good. The proposition on the ballot is nothing but a page book out of a page out of Bernie Sanders' page book. It's socialism at its worst.
What would you like to see come out of the next year in terms of political discourse. We've got a few seconds left. It's become very, very polarized.
It has. Politics has always been a little contrary and rough and tumble, but it has become very, very
Ugly?
Ugly is the word for it, and you have to be very careful what you do now. You say it in my times. Today you can say whatever you want about anybody.
Governor Brewer, thank you for being on the program.
Thank
Great
you
to see
so
you
much
again,
for having me
for
here.
kicking off Newsmaker Saturday. I hope you'll watch along with everybody else. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great to see you. We'll see you next week on Fox 10 Newsmaker Saturday.